Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and we're happy to have you with us. We do hope that you will support us by liking us, give us some comments, and subscribe, and even maybe support us on Patreon. Whatever you like to do, we're here for you and hope to be here for a long time to come. But this is the space and the place where we get down to some real things about what reality is all about. I did want to mention, before I introduce our guests, that I just got back from vacation. You can tell by the shirt. I was at Virginia Beach. And it was interesting because we were at the north end of the beach where it's nice and quiet. And we used to take our kids to the south end of the beach where it was really crowded and bustling with all kinds of energy. But the people who I'm going to introduce you to now are going to talk to you about how to get to the north end of the beach from the south end of the beach. Where you can be a little quieter and a little more meditative. So I'm happy to introduce John and Heidi Kowalchyk. They are the producers of the Northeast Reiki Retreat. Mm-hmm. And you've heard me discuss that retreat on this podcast a number of times. So I'm so excited to have them with us. If you've listened to a few of our episodes and you got to hear Sharon Madison's episode, I think that was episode 5, she was a major presenter at the Northeast Reiki Retreat. So without further ado, John and Heidi, I'm going to turn this over to you. You do know our process. Basically, give us your stories from childhood till now in terms of your spiritual journey. You may want to break that up and give us your separate spiritual journeys and then talk about your spiritual journey together. So it's all yours.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. We appreciate the invitation, and we're so happy to be here to share our story with you and your people who listen and watch this program.
Yeah.
So
thank you for inviting us. We're really excited to be here and have a little chat with you and share our stories.
Yeah. So we thought we'd start individually because clearly we haven't known each other since day one, but about day 3.
Yeah.
It was very early.
We met when we were 16, so yeah. It's been a while.
It's been some time.
We have quite a story.
Spiritual development. I thinking back to my childhood, family life was not so much spiritual. It was about living life and going to school and father going to work and mother running the house. And while they did send me and my 2 sisters to Catholic school, it was Catholic school. It was not a spiritual experience for me. At least I will say at this point, I can look back on anything I will tell you in my early years, and while spiritual things were occurring and it was happening, it was not in my consciousness. I know today that we are always spiritually connected, and it's just a matter of whether we have an awareness of it or not. So I was totally unaware. I would say Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts brought an ethic to my life, morality, right and wrong, the laws, the whole spirit of scouting was a good training for a way of life, but not spiritual for me. And I would say in my 20s and 30s, I really lost my way and awareness of spirituality, which we'll get into in a second. But I'll let Heidi get you from her early childhood up to about our 20s and 30s, because we're together by that point.
Yeah, right. I would say in my family, we were a Protestant Christian family, but we didn't go to church more than once a year. My mother taught me some Bible verses, but not any discussion about the spiritual meaning of any of that. And it was just, kind of over my head. I didn't really have any thought about it when I was little. As I got a little older, I remember going to church and, I went to Bible school in the summer Bible school and that kind of thing. And really wishing that I could see that, there was more depth to what the stories were all about, but it wasn't, I was kind of longing for that, but it was not coming to me. I wasn't getting it from anything that I was experiencing as a child. And so then, as John said, we met when we were 16, so our together life has been way longer than our life apart from each other. And so I would say, should we jump forward to when we got married?
Well, sure. Because right out of college, we got married. Again, not much of a spiritual life. I was, looking back, I can see how selfish and self-centered I was. It was all about ego.
So did you go to the same college?
No.
Okay,
No.
so
probably a good thing.
You were separate at that time. Okay.
Yes. We graduated high school together. We met in high school, and so a good 2.5 years we knew each other in high school, and then dated through college, even though we went to different colleges.
Right. We weren't too far apart. We were like an hour and a half or 2 hours apart. So
and then got married.
We saw each other a lot, but we're not married.
We got married September after graduating college. So we got married. We had kids. We started going back to church, probably in my mind, for the same reason my parents did. Well, bring the kids, you now have children, and let's expose them to church and make them aware of that. I'm sure for me it was, a social atmosphere, a way to connect with community. But beyond that, I can't say for me that it was a deep spiritual experience or had me.
Okay, just a minute now. We've got a Catholic and a Protestant here. So what church did you go to?
Well, that was very interesting that you asked that question. And we were both professional, in program development and planning and those kinds of things in our life. So we planned accordingly. We tried many different churches in our community and chose one.
Yeah, it was more for the experience and the community for us than it was about the tenets of a religion or the dogma or ritual or anything like that. We were looking for a place where we and our kids could be connected with other people and expose them and us to, at that point, religion, not even thinking spirituality.
So
right.
Where did you end up? You still didn't answer that question.
We ended up at First Presbyterian Church when we were living in Binghamton. Okay. And so that's where we went, and we chose that church, as John said, because we thought that would be a great community, and also the minister that was there resonated with us, and he said things that we liked to hear. And
after changes in that Presbyterian church, we went to the next community over and spent several years at another Presbyterian church, Conklin Press.
And again, it was more for the community. Our children went to school with the children that went to that church. But I would say at that point we were starting to be a little bit more awakened, and that minister talked more about his life and connecting the spiritual life with that. And so I think for me, I got a little more out of it as far as that goes. But I mean, I taught Sunday school. So I was in early childhood education in my career. So, I could teach all of that stuff and tell the stories and do the activities with the children, but it really had very little inner meaning for me.
And I was in government and politics, so there was very little spirituality in my professional area. I would say for me, the biggest event that returned me to spiritual pursuits was hitting a physical bottom when I was 29 years old, or 39 years old. And I have been abstinent from alcohol since then. That was at first a physical bottom. It took about a year to really hit an emotional and spiritual bottom when I realized that a program of spiritual recovery would be very beneficial, helpful. People that I saw were happy and joyous and free, and I wanted what they had. And so that was really my first conscious effort at pursuing a spiritual development.
So are we talking AA?
We are.
Okay.
We are. Yeah. Yeah. And a little before me, Heidi.
Well, yes, just a little bit before. I want to just say one thing that, as I said, I taught Sunday school and I went to those Bible classes and so forth when I was a kid. They always left me wanting. And the wanting was, where is God? Because that never seemed to be explained to me. Where is God? Who is God? So fast forward to the age 39, when we together had a bottom. As a family, we had a bottom. And so I started going to Al-Anon. And was directed by doctors in the hospital to go to Al-Anon and go to classes so I could learn more about the situation my family was in that I was oblivious to in the past, So I started going to Al-Anon, and for me, I would say it was a satisfying, a longing I had to want to go within, but not have any skills about how to do it. So this was a very profound spiritual awakening process for me, and for our whole family. The whole family was affected, and the whole family I could see started to heal, and. So I was intentionally working really hard at feeling better and being better and doing better and figuring out what was in here. And I didn't even know. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing, but that's what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And I could look back at that. And I started to awaken by going to Al-Anon groups and telling my story and realizing that many of us have a similar story. And I too, like John said, I could see that other people had what I wanted. So I worked hard to try to achieve what I wanted through going to meetings, conversing with newfound friends, and seeing a counselor, and reading many, many self-help books and spiritual literature. And, sharing that information with friends. And I want to tell a little story about a really meaningful time for me, because I read The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. I don't know if you've read that book, but I think I've read it at least 3 or 4 times. And because that's where I tell the story that's where I found God in that book. And some people that I told were just, they were just shocked. Like, how could you find a God in a book and not the Bible? And it was, but it's my Midas muffler story. And John, he knows it. He wasn't with me, but I had taken my car to Midas Muffler for, guess what? A new muffler. And I'm in the waiting room and I'm reading the Road Less Traveled. And so I'm in the part where I think it's the section on grace, where it's really talking to me. And I was searching. This is going to tell me. I just knew this was going to tell me where God is. And whatever it said to me that God is in here. And I had the most bright light experience. I felt like I was the light. And it just was a huge, powerful spiritual experience for me in the Midas Muffler shop, where I felt love and peace that's beyond, like every Bible says, Jesus says, is beyond my understanding and passeth all understanding. And that's what was happening until I looked up and I went, oh my God, people are going to see this light. They were going to see the light, that's shining. And of course, nobody did. They're all just doing their own thing, and everything that was going on within me. But I knew at that point, with no doubt, that God is right here. And so that was huge for me, and it just helped me move on and want to experience more and move more along the path on this journey. So,
and I think in going to meetings and listening to people and following suggestions, instructions, began to open me to listening to and following spiritual guidance. It first started by hearing that directly through people who I would trust, and I would follow their direction. And that was a big surrender for an ego like me. That was a big turn towards spiritual development and away from just living an egoic life of self-will run riot. And so the next thing that came to us was a friend in the program said, it's about time you take maybe a look at this big, thick book. It's called A Course in Miracles. And so I bought the book and started reading it. And very soon after I'm reading it, I'm talking to Heidi and sharing passages out of it with her. More and more and more. And we're spending more time reading it together and talking about it. And that was really the next big jump in our spiritual development, was to get connected to the book itself, A Course in Miracles, with each other in a far deeper way than probably ever before in our relationship, and then going to study groups and sharing and learning and listening and talking with others about what we were reading and interpreting and internalizing out of A Course in Miracles. And of course, you could spend a whole hour just on A Course in Miracles, but there's so much more to our story. That was simply the next step in our progression.
Yeah, and of course, when he brought it up to me at first, I had never heard of A Course in Miracles. I didn't know what it was or anything. So I think for me, the biggest part of allowing the Course in Miracles to change me was to trust that this book was channeled the way it was channeled, and that what's in there is truth, and I could see it. I could feel it, and I could feel it for myself. And well, for us, I think that we would both agree that it changed everything between us.
Oh, absolutely. And the shift that of many that I can think of is, for me, it was a transition from listening to and following the suggestions of others to now really going to spirit and following guidance from within, which was very new, very foreign, very unfamiliar territory for me until this point. So now I think both of us are getting ideas or thoughts or seeing coincidences and realizing that it was God, universe, call it what you will, offering guidance to us, and we began to accept it and take hold of it and act on it. That's about the time we decided to move from Binghamton, New York, upstate, to Long Island. It was what we thought was a move for career purposes for me, and Heidi would find a job there, which we did. But what it really did was it brought us to a much higher vibration, a higher consciousness. The people who we knew no one initially,
right?
And we were now at a point in our spiritual development where we were finding and holding on to seekers, to people conscious of the same journey that we had started only a few years before.
Right, and I think we also started to realize that what was coming to us, the synchronicity of life, and what was coming to us is spirit speaking to us, and that we gave ourselves permission to be open and follow what the guidance was. And so when we went to Long Island, we were open to finding a Course in Miracles study group that we would resonate with.
That very powerful individuals and a collective energy in that study group as well.
Yeah.
I think the next step in our evolution was probably Reiki. And you?
Right. But we went to Reiki because we started going to a Unity church.
That is true.
So that was the next thing that we realized. Actually, back in Binghamton, we started going to a Unity study group. And there was no Unity church in that area. But we thought, well, there must be one in Long Island. So we did drive 45 minutes
to go to church
on Sunday. And it was our Sunday because it was a 45-minute drive. We went to church. We stayed and chatted with
fellowship and a meal.
And so made close friends there. And it was just a lovely experience. And all churches do some fundraising. So there was a silent auction at the church, and one of our friends at the church, who was a newcomer along with us and went through the newcomer class, was a Reiki practitioner. Now, I knew nothing about Reiki, but she donated a Reiki session for people to bid on. And guess who won the bid? I did.
And I'm going to interrupt the Reiki story just to add a little to the evolution of my spiritual development, maybe ours, from Presbyterian to Unity. Because at the Presbyterian church, if I were to attend Bible studies or meetings or whatever, I would be questioning and probing and inquiring and never satisfied with the answers. Yeah. And the big shift for me in Unity was it much more made sense, and I could accept and understand and grow with the approach that Unity had to spirituality than I had been exposed to this point through the Catholic Church or even through Presbyterian teachings and theology. So I was resonating. Now, I was perhaps more open at this point anyway, but the way it's presented in Unity at that point in time for us, it had more meaning and more resonance in my journey.
Yeah, and I would agree. Absolutely. Yeah. I would agree also.
But Reiki.
So anyway, so I won the bid on that Reiki session, and I went to her office and had my Reiki session, and it was an amazing experience for me. I felt, as she was doing the Reiki, I felt that there was no separation between the person giving the Reiki and me. I felt the top of my head, which is my crown chakra, open up wider than ever, and probably ever than I had ever experienced at that point anyway. And it was just such a warm, sweet, loving, healing time for me. And I loved it. So, I thanked her so much, and I went home and I told John all about my experience. And rather than saying, wow, I can't wait to have my next Reiki experience, my next Reiki session, I said, I really want to learn how to do this. I want to be a Reiki practitioner. I don't know why, but that was how I felt guided. And so I started my search for a Reiki teacher so that I could learn Reiki. And our Course in Miracles study group had many Reiki practitioners in the group, which we found out after I'd had my Reiki session and knew what it was. So then they helped me find, we lived about an hour and a half from New York City, so I didn't want to have to go into the city to take my classes.
Right.
So they helped me find someone that was close by. And I called her up, her name was Jody, and she said, well, I would love to be your teacher, but I'm a little semi-retired, so I don't have a class coming up. But if you would like to be my student, I would like you to find another person to be in the class. So I said, okay. I got off the phone. I asked John if he'd like to be a Reiki practitioner.
And I'm going to tell you what my response was, but note again the notch up of following spiritual guidance. She said, so would you take the class with me? And I said, sure, okay. What's Reiki and who said that?
Yeah. Did I say that?
Did I say yes to something I have no idea what it is?
Right.
But the next thing I know, we're in a Reiki 1 class.
Yeah, and it was the most beautiful thing. She also had a friend who wanted to teach with her. So it was the two of us with 2 Reiki Masters.
Yeah.
So it was a beautiful experience. And every now and then maybe someone else would come to the class to join us, but only like for 1 class.
Now, these Reiki Masters were like old timers in a 12-step program. They were, you will take Reiki 1, you will practice for a year, and then you'll come back to us and take Reiki 2, and then you will hold shares and circles, and you will keep us apprised of your progress. And then perhaps in another year, which ended up being 2 years,
yeah,
we took Master with them. So they were very rigorous with us in our Reiki training, from 1 to 2 and then 2 to Master. And was it right after Master that they then said we'd go to a retreat?
Yes. We had just gotten our Reiki Master and certification, and the International Center for Reiki Training was having their annual retreat up at Silver Bay in Lake George, and they asked us if we would like to go with them to the retreat, and we were all about that. That was amazing.
They asked us. It was more like, we're going and you're coming with us. Okay.
Yeah. And we had a wonderful experience, but we'll tell more about that.
We'll come back
later.
to that.
We'll
You'll see how we circle back to Reiki retreats and Silver Bay. So that was our beginning with Reiki. And now we're in this spiritual flow of Course in Miracles and Reiki, and at some point we're at a wedding, and a person we knew of and from church, from that Presbyterian church, said, oh, I now do sound therapy with tuning forks. Come over to the house after the reception and I'll give you a session.
And we said, okay. And off we went after the wedding reception to their house and had it was a mini session. It was like a 10-minute each session. And
absolutely hooked.
we couldn't wait to, again, not that we couldn't wait to have another session, but we said, we need to take this class.
We need to do
Where
this.
did you take the class? So then we booked the class, and it was out in the middle of nowhere in northern Pennsylvania, and spent, I think it was, did we go 2 weeks? I can't remember. 2 weekends?
Maybe
I can't
2
remember.
weekends. Maybe 2 weekends.
So now we're certified sound therapists.
But back to Reiki for 1 second, because it leads to the next thing that we pursued. Somewhere along our training or discussions, folks were saying, it kind of enhances your being a Reiki master and performing Reiki on folks and a little legal protection to become an ordained minister. So we thought, okay, ordained minister. And sure enough, we found online, click, 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 congratulations, you're an ordained minister.
Through, what is it, Universal Life Church?
And it is what you make of it, but it literally is just put your name and an email address in, and when you click I accept, it says congratulations, you're a minister. And we did that. And for a period of time, nothing came of it, but I always was thinking that maybe we should do a little more. There should be something a little more substantial in this being a minister element of our lives. And sure enough, back at that Course in Miracles study group, somehow in one of the conversations, the leader of the group, whose house we'd been going to for 10 years, said, we come to realize she was an ordained minister. So I asked her, how did you become a minister? She goes, well, it's a little thing called Alliance of Divine Love. And in fact, there are the books that I studied from right on the table. Take them home with you, take a look at them and see what you think. And I looked at these 36 lessons and thought, wow, this is pretty cool stuff. Psychic training and inner work and spiritual counseling, all kinds of issues that sounded interesting to me. So I called that number and got connected with a mentor and signed up and started taking these classes 1 day a week. I would call my mentor, who was living in a state of Maine and I'm on Long Island, and over the phone we'd be looking at my answers to the questions on the email that I'm sending her. This is before Zoom or, at least in our consciousness. So it was emails and phone calls, and I'd be sharing those lessons with Heidi. And it reminded me of when he was taking master classes for a master's degree at college, and he'd come home and say, oh, well, look at this that I'm studying. And it was all things that were really resonating with me for my work. So I started the same master's program. So we ended up with the same master's degree because of that.
In public administration. So it's the same thing. He comes home and he's reading to me these wonderful lessons and also involving me, because some of the things homework was that you needed another person to discuss something with or meditate
experiment,
with.
Counseling, whatever the topic was. Very often you needed a person to, do that.
So that was me. And I at some point early on, I said, oh my gosh, I need to take this too, because this is exactly what I want. Yeah. And so then you finished what? A year ahead of me, or 8 months or something ahead of me. And then, I started, and it's a 2-year program. It's about a year where you study the lessons and do homework and so forth. And then there was a year of an internship.
And one of many significant points of this Alliance of Divine Love training was when you become ordained, you're given a chapel number. It's like your legal entity in Alliance of Divine Love, and you can give it a name if you want. I'm Chapel 2000. That's the number. I was the 2000th minister to be ordained, but we talked about it, and I named it Ripple Effect Spiritual Therapies. put that right on the EIN and on my business card, Reverend John Kowalchyk, Ripple Effect Spiritual Therapies. And that's still to today the umbrella of all of our programs that we'll be telling you about as they come up. But we chose Ripple Effect Spiritual Therapies for the meaning that it had for us, and that is simply just like a pebble into a still pool of water, and ripples of energy radiate out from that point. And we believe that our spiritual work with others would be energy, and whatever we think, say, or do ripples out to the entire universe. Perhaps to the people we're talking directly to, but on a very quantum physics level, it ripples out to the entire universe. And so Ripple Effect Spiritual Therapies had a very significant meaning for me in choosing that, in establishing the purpose and direction of my ministry.
And at that point, we had felt we were guided to do more work. So it was important that we picked a name that really said what we felt our purpose was.
I think next is drumming, or is there anything?
Yep, I think drumming is next.
Drumming's another one of those, it just dropped in on us. Very close to where we lived, there was a community of Franciscan brothers, and they had a labyrinth, and they would do some meditations. And so we went to a program one evening. It was I think a meditation in their chapel. And as we were walking out of the chapel, I noticed a door open to a closet, and there were 20, 30 djembe drums, African drums. And at that instant, off to my side is this little, very short, very small, 110-year-old monk who happened to just be right there. And I turned and said, "Gee, what are those for?" And he goes, "Well, we used to have drum circles here regularly, but the two people that ran them, one died and one moved away, so you should do it." And Bob, I never met this man, and maybe we went to one drum circle ever in our life.
And we liked it.
And so guess what my answer was to him? My answer to him was, "Okay.
Yeah.
Now what do we do?"
Yeah. And we did. We started leading those drum circles. And there'd be 20 people there. And it was beautiful. We didn't have to do a thing other than come and bring a few drums.
Move the drums into the room and greet everybody.
Yep. And they did all the advertising. They already had a group of people who liked to drum, so those people came. And for whatever reason, we did well enough that they came back.
And go back to one of our two Reiki Masters. Mm-hmm. Both of them had drums and enjoyed drumming, but one of them was very much into it and came to the circle, to the drum circles. But one of them found a facilitator training. She said, "Way out in Western Pennsylvania, we can go. There's a one-day workshop. Right. This guy trains drum circle leaders." So we went, stayed overnight, and took the drum circle training, enjoyed it, got a lot of great information, came back, tried those techniques, and found them to be very rewarding and successful. Returned to a 4-day training with that person. His name is Jim Donovan. We love to always tell people about him. He is the drummer of the former band Rusted Root, so he has a platinum record to his name. A very good drummer. He's an academic now, and he studies wellness and percussion and energy and vibration and the impact of all of these things on our wellness. And so he's an incredible individual, and we continue to learn because we continue to go to his programs. But now here we are, Course in Miracles study group and Reiki Masters and sound therapists with tuning forks, ADL ministers. which we didn't say, but we shortly became mentors, and now we train ministers through ADL. So an individual, we've had 4 or 5 students, but they, if the universe sends them to us, we put them through the same program of study that we went through and guide them through an internship and ordain them as ministers. So, and now we're drumming, and this is still all on Long Island, and we're holding sessions in our home and programs in our home, and what comes next.
And I had felt,
I want to just cut in for a minute. Was Debbie Holden one of your students?
not till we moved up to Albany.
Yes.
Yeah.
She is one of our last, one of our most recent, yes.
And she's originally from Long Island, but we didn't, she was long away from Long Island, and we didn't know her till we moved to Albany.
She's been one of my guests on this podcast.
Yeah, we love Debbie. She's a dear friend of ours, and she's a student of ours as well. And
a little, when we talk about our yoga science experience, she comes in at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
So where are we?
Well, I just wanted to share that this is another thing about trusting our inner guidance, and that is that we started having all of these things, that energy healing and through Reiki and the sound therapy and the drumming, and then we became ministers, and we had a thought that we felt guided to have some kind of a spiritual retreat center. And so our children both of them ended up in the Albany, New York area. They grew up in Binghamton, but ended up in Albany.
Which is where we grew up as children as well. We were from Troy, which is
close by,
very close by.
So we started having the thought that we were going to be moving up to Albany, and that we would have our retreat center and open it when we moved up here. And Spirit was having none of that. We were to start then. We lived in a 1,400 square foot ranch house. And I thought, how do you have a retreat center in Long Island at a 1,400 square foot ranch house with, we had less than maybe a half an acre, something like that, of land. And
for Long Island, we had a big lot.
It was big for Long Island, but in my mind, a retreat center has to be huge and, a lot of land and so forth. But that's not how it was supposed to be. We were supposed to start having all of the sessions. We even had some retreats at our house, not just Reiki and sound therapy and drumming. We had drum circles at our house in our living room. We had some almost day-long retreats right there in our house in that little space, and they were beautiful. It was a beautiful time.
And something else to point out was Heidi kind of passed over, but when she said, "Oh no, Spirit would have none of this." Again, the evolution of our trusting and connecting to Spirit and guidance went from kind of oblivious to coincidences and hearing through people to the thought being loud and clear and clear statement, in this case in Heidi's consciousness, being directed very specifically. You will do this here, you will do this now.
Right.
So that's, wow.
Yeah. So then I have a really fun story. It's a little story to tell you about I call it our John and Yoko weekend. And this was another life-changing experience. So through a book, I have got The Road Less Traveled, that we've got A Course in Miracles.
Hundreds of books.
And now Christmas, whatever that year was, I don't even remember now, we each gave each other the book, The Secret.
Unbeknownst to each other.
And we didn't know. So we ended up with 2 books. And it was when The Secret was, I think the movie was out and it was popular. I don't know, was whatever, in the early 2000s. And it was perfect for us at that moment. And we decided, well, we always went to Binghamton to visit friends for New Year's Eve. So it's about a 5 or 6 hour drive, and
from Long Island
to Binghamton, and we often read to each other. We read the Course in Miracles to each other. We read other books, that we find that we both have an interest in. So we said, well, let's read The Secret to each other in the car. So off we go. We have our German Shepherd, and I had brought a fruit salad and a chocolate cake I'd made to bring to our
contribution to the dinner.
For New Year's Eve, and it's New Year's Eve, and it's about 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that, on New Year's Eve, and our car stopped. And
Stroudsburg,
Pennsylvania. John drove it off the exit, and it just stopped.
Died.
Now, fortunately, we have AAA, thankfully. And so we called AAA and said, oh my gosh, we're at this exit. We don't know what to do. Here we are with the dog and the cake and the fruit salad, and we can't get to anywhere. So,
long story short, we end up in a motel that would accept dogs for 3 nights. For 3 nights. 3 nights.
Because it was like a Friday night, and then, nobody was open on Saturday or Sunday, and I think they had Monday off. I forget how it all worked.
For New Year's week, yeah.
Yeah.
So we sat in bed eating cake and fruit salad and read the entire Secret to each other.
Yep. And it was phenomenal. It really did. It was life-changing. And now we both realize that the Secret is just the icing on the cake. There's a lot more spiritual depth to
many other things,
manifesting than the Secret really provides us. But it really did open our eyes to a whole new world that we hadn't really experienced before.
Well, in fact, we were experiencing but didn't appreciate it.
That's true.
We left a 100-year-old poor farmer's farmhouse with a dirt basement floor in Binghamton to a very well-built, very nice home in Long Island. We moved from salaries to salaries from Binghamton to Long Island. We had all kinds of abundance that by reading The Secret,
we knew to appreciate.
We knew.
Yeah.
We realized.
Yeah.
This is happening in our life.
It happens in our life. And we realized how to move forward with that gift of knowledge about that, and how to help others with it also, and how to see when it's not happening for others. Now we can see why. Why is it not happening for us? Why is it not happening for others? So it was very, very life-changing.
And one other quick story about Long Island. I don't know how we connected with a medical intuitive medium. Since that time, maybe 6-7 years ago, we've talked to her 2, maybe 3 times, and gave us great insights to ourselves, to our family, confirmed our purpose and the risks that we would take would be fine, gave us healing. And so I just want to mention that we did and would again today. We haven't recently, but utilize the gifts and service of someone, a medium, because this person was the real deal and was the information and the discussion and the revelations were very valuable, confirming healing for us. So that was another step in our consciousness to realize that level of conscious contact and communication is available to all of us. Some of us develop the gift and the skill, and some don't. But we saw and see and believe in that. And this person used these gifts for the best and the highest and the greatest degree of love. And so we were very blessed to have this connection and this relationship with her. So that was.
And I think something that's important to, if you're looking for someone like that to help you on your journey, is to look for someone that only accesses the highest white light.
Yeah. So let's move. We both retired. We move up here. We kind of told you that was in the cards because kids and more grandkids are living in the Albany area. So how many people, when they retire, move north and upsize? Well, that's what we did.
Only crazy people like us who feel guided that's what we're supposed to do, and pushed by our children who, at that point, I think we had one grandchild and one on the way, or maybe two grandchildren and one on the way.
Spoiler alert, we have 6.
Now we have 6. So we did need to come up here for all the love in the world to be given. And
but you brought your abundance with you.
Yes, exactly. And it took 18 months to find where we are now.
Yeah.
And that medium told us that you're ready, but they are not, whatever that meant at the time. You're ready, but they are not. And the people who sold this home, we came to realize they had gone through a very painful process of deciding to sell. But when they did, we were ready. We walked in the door and said to each other, this is it. We're, this is our home. Yeah. This is our retreat center. And here we are. And pre-COVID, just barely pre-COVID, we started Course in Miracles here and Reiki circles here and private sessions.
And everything was in person because who knew what Zoom was back then? I never heard of Zoom.
Yeah. And then COVID hit and things changed. Now we will going back to Reiki now for a second. Just before COVID, we had our first Reiki retreat, 12 people. We were in a very little venue, not too far from here, and it was fine, but it was small, and we thought we'd grow it. And we had plans for the next year that had to be canceled because of COVID. And so we contemplated, what do we do? How do we do? When do we do it? What's the deal? And both of us, independently, but almost at the very same time, the message was go big or go home. Okay, so we remembered that 2014 retreat that we just loved in Silver Bay, and we contacted, even before this point, but we had contacted the International Center and said, please come back. And for many reasons, they couldn't and they wouldn't and they didn't. And so we filled that void by and with their blessing, in fact, the president and founder of the International Center has attended once virtually and now in person, and he's coming back. And that was all just guidance. We were guided to go back to Silver Bay, and that place is an amazing facility. The people are amazing to work with, and folks just many remembered going in 2014, and we're so happy to be able to come back to another Reiki conference there. And
it's so, this is a little bit on the side, but it's really fun to be on a spiritual journey and be awake in it, as awake as you can possibly be, I guess, because it's really fun to watch how life flows when we are in the flow. When we are in the flow and following God's plan, it's just so much fun. I mean, we watched it happen when we moved from Binghamton to Long Island. We watched it happen when we moved up here and found this home. And then we watched it happen again as we kind of struggled during COVID to figure out what to do about Northeast Reiki Retreat. And then as soon as we found that, or decided we were going to go big or go home, and everything started to flow all over again.
Now, it's like flowing down a very high energy river. I mean, if you aren't concerned about the direction, you're going to go. It doesn't mean it's always easy. There's rocks in the way, and the current will pull you under, and so there's a lot of work, and sometimes it's stressful, but the end point is clear. It's just taking you where it's intended to go, and that makes spending all this time and energy worthwhile and just accepting that it's the right thing for us to be doing. And
Yeah.
so here we are.
So
right?
here we are, and we're getting ready for Northeast Reiki Retreat 2024.
Yeah.
I can't. It's so amazing to me that we're already on our planning our third year.
Yeah, and Bob, of course, you have told us that you've mentioned it in other programs,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we met you there,
Right.
and so you've certainly had the experience as well, and we're just excited to be. I mean, I don't take credit for the energy. We hold the space. We're the hollow bone. We're the conduit.
Yeah.
Well, people come to us, and we get them involved, and it just happens through us, not by us.
That's for sure. That's
Well,
absolutely
I
for sure.
certainly felt blessed to be there the first year that you started doing this, and I was there this year. And you say you don't really put these things together, you're just the hollow shell of it. But I want to know who put together that closing ceremony, because that is just so terrific and just so much love coming through there.
Yeah.
So whose idea was that? And describe it
we
to our audience.
We experienced that at an Alliance of Divine Love conference.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So what we do is take, we've got all of these different wells to draw from, and so what happens is we ask for guidance, and it just all the right things from the right well comes together, and there we have an experience. I mean, that's what I do with. We haven't talked about the Women's Grounding Retreat yet, but that's for sure for Women's Grounding Retreat. I have a 1-day retreat I offer once or twice a year, and started doing that in 2019. Did a couple of years of on Zoom, and then now we're back in doing them in person. But that's how I have a theme, and all of the activities that flow with that theme to bring the best experience for the women that are going to be at the retreat comes through me. Not if I try to figure it out myself, it's very difficult. But for Northeast, I mean, everything we do now, we just ask and accept and then follow the direction. So, like John said, that one activity is very powerful, and we felt it at the conference we went to, and we're now offering it for others. So, thank you for.
Just to describe it very briefly, every individual gets to be affected and impacted by everyone else, by a saying or a word or a thought or an affirmation or a touch as they walk eyes closed through the line of people. And so there's trust involved and there's uncertainty, but it's just all about love and energy, and it's very, very impactful. We know you're keeping close track of the time. We can tell you as much as you like about the upcoming Northeast Reiki Retreat, or just say it's northeastreikiretreat.org. People can find out all they need to know about that.
I'm going to put your ministry, your Facebook page, your Reiki Retreat, and your Reiki Retreat Facebook page information on my website. That's
Great.
Connected to the podcast.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
For people to follow up on all this.
Great.
Yeah, we just have time at this point, and I warned you about this, I think, that that I asked the guest to leave our audience with some words of wisdom. Or just any words. They don't have to be too wise. but keep in mind it's a family show, so not.
I'll go first, because when we got to that point in our talk, thinking earlier about this, I said, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. That came to me. And then I thought about it for a second, and I realized we are human beings, not doings. We're beings. And the very next thought I had was our work in meditation. And we didn't tell you about our connection with Debbie Holden through the American Meditation Institute, which is right up the road from us, where we are students of yoga science, and we've been learning meditation. But my word of wisdom would be life's journey is within. It's an inside job. And meditation is the gateway to, call it what you will, peace, enlightenment, nirvana, heaven, God, one, unity. And so we need to spend time as human beings within. Now, whether that's through sound, or whether that's through Reiki, or whether that's through church or meditation practice, the journey really is an internal journey to peace. And the gateway to that is meditation. So that's my word of wisdom. Just let it be.
Okay.
And it was interesting because John and I, we thought about what we would say individually. And then when John told me what his was, and I said, well, that's so interesting, because mine is what I was told was given. The answer is always within us. And which is, how do we find that? Through meditation. And the other thing is that I think it's important, in my journey, it was very important to be patient and trust that the answers will come, and that we are meant for the highest good and the highest degree of love. And so that's what I wanted to say about that, because in our ministry, whether it's through a retreat or a one-on-one or our Zoom meetings, is we strive to give folks the tools so that they can find that inner peace for themselves.
Yeah, and that the outer life that we live is an opportunity to teach, if only by our example, to teach peace, and that our every thought, word, or deed ripples out to that entire universe. So choose wisely.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. It's just been very enjoyable. The answers that you've given to the unasked questions will be appreciated by many of the people who have been touched by you, and those who will be touched by you in the future. I'm looking forward to the 2025 Northeast Reiki Retreat. Will that be in May again? Or?
Yes, 2024, May 3, 4, and 5 is the actual retreat. Okay. And once again, we have several pre-retreat classes lined up for the few days before that as well.
And I highly recommend some of those pre-retreat classes, because they're just dynamite. You have a lot of good people who present there as well as who attend.
Yes.
So thank you so much, and namaste.
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 And audience, as I always say, take what resonates with you and don't discard the rest. Just put it on the shelf for when you're ready to have that resonate with you also. Until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.